Just to Serve TV is on the air. Hello there, Linda Kenney Baden.
Hello there, Michael Bryant, and I'm so excited because I got my first notification. I've signed up for notifications for our show.
Finally, you can watch the show.
And right now, I got a notification on my phone. I just did it. I got it.
See, it works. So those who are having struggles with it, keep at it. It's a hit and miss proposition. I'm not quite sure what the problem is with YouTube, but they don't seem to care.
So we're going to introduce our special show, and we have
we're so excited because
assistant host.
Let me get into this. Let's get into this. Okay. So obviously we've been covering the A$AP Rocky case from the beginning to the end, and we had Joe on, we had his son Chris on. So we're continuing that theme, right? And we are so lucky to have with us, and I'm gonna set this up with a little video here. Okay, so stand by while I do this, and then it'll be pretty easy to figure out who it is we have on. But I'm gonna run this, and then we'll kind of get into it more.
When I come face to face with a killer, their entire body tells a story. The flicker of an eye, a tremble in their finger, an increase in pulse. And I can read it all like a book. I'm Dr. Michel Ward. Follow me into the mind of a murderer.
All new series, Thursday, February 19th at 9, only on Investigation Discovery.
Ooh, and one of the reasons I chose that, because Michel's done so many different things, Dr. Ward, that is. I wrote for that show, and then I was fired because my wife was the executive producer. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Executive producer, and, I wore out my welcome, apparently. So without further...
Lisa, can we just say who your executive producer is? It is the great Lisa Bryant.
Oh, it's a great,
fabulous.
Well,
wonderful. The great showrunner.
Most people would,
everything.
Most people would know her from, of course, the Epstein, what was it called again? Filthy Rich, and the Ghislaine Maxwell follow-up.
On Netflix? Is that on Netflix? On Netflix?
Yeah.
She's done it all. And now she's isn't she great, Michelle? She's the best showrunner in the world, right?
I love all you guys. I've worked with every single one of you. And you guys top my list of favorite human beings on the planet.
Likewise, this is the colliding of all these different worlds. So.
All right. Well, since I fired him last time, he's firing me. I'm going to
get the hell out
and let you do your thing.
Okay.
It's good seeing you.
Bye.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. So, how are you? How you doing?
I'm still riding the high of that victory. That
I'm sure you are.
That was top 10 scariest things I've ever done, and I've never ever wanted an acquittal as badly as I wanted that one. It just, and Linda, we did Spectre together, and I really wanted that one.
We spent 6 months. We spent 6 months together, and through my pneumonia, where I almost died. Remember?
Gosh, you would be on your deathbed, and you'd just be like, "I got it. Gonna do the closings." You were. I'm gonna cross-examine that guy. You were.
I know. So the doctor told me if I didn't go rest in that weekend, I was gonna die. And I said, I can't. I have a tired case.
I can't die. I have a closing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so Michel, for our audience, fill in the blanks. Your connection with A$AP Rocky, the trial, and how did it all evolve?
Sure. So before I ever did anything in entertainment, when I graduated my PhD program, I became a jury consultant, a litigation consultant. And it was funny because I really cut my teeth on the Spectre trial. I worked with Richard Gabriel from Decision Analysis, and my first big criminal case was the Spectre trial. And then from there, I've always continued.
Can I interrupt you? The one that we had the hung jury on.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't get him convicted.
She's always makes a point of that. Yes, go ahead.
Me too. Because they're like, didn't he go to prison? I'm like, not on my watch. He didn't. No, we had a wonderful hung jury. This one juror, he was this amazing Mormon engineering PhD student. And I remember fighting to keep him on. And he was so by the book, and the ballistics were all in our favor in that case. And he just went by the book, and he hung that jury and bought us a lot of time.
Right. He was the foreperson. And I always tell the story, by the way, about you and Richard, because you just don't go there and pick a jury on that day.
No.
That with all of our meetings and all of your sociological studies and all of the mock focus groups we did. Secrets are out. Okay. That we identified the perfect juror, and he was the only one that came in. We were labeled them actually 1 to 5. We had reversed the numbering, if you recall, because some people couldn't handle doing the 5 being the top. We reversed the numbering, and he was like one of the only ones that came in 1. And we had decided that if he got in the box, that's it. We'd say, that's it. We're done.
We're done. And he remained. So after that, I did a lot of talking head stuff, because I don't know if you know this, Michael, but the attorneys were gagged for a while, but Richard and I were not. So we were the talking heads. And then from there came the TV shows and the podcasts. But I never stopped doing the jury consulting work. So Richard called me, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago. And he said, how busy are you right now? And I'm like, no, I'm slow. Why? What do you have? And he's like, how do you feel about picking the ASAP Rocky jury? I'm like, okay. Sounds amazing. So we did that, and we worked with them the entire time. It was an amazing, those are amazing attorneys, and it was an incredible experience.
Did you know much about the case before you were brought into it?
No, I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I'd heard of him. Obviously, I know who Rihanna is, and I'd heard of him. And I knew a couple of people who had known him in New York, and they were like, oh, he's a really good guy. And yeah, so I just kind of dove in. I was like, what is all this? What are these grainy videos? And it was a very interesting case to work on.
Michael's leaning back in his chair.
Yeah, well, I thought I was giving you some opening to ask a question, but I can.
Oh, okay,
continue.
all right.
Yeah, okay.
I know that you were so on. No,
There's so many things I want to tell you.
So let me just ask you this, because I was with Richard, as you know, while you're picking this jury, and we were doing this presentation with the head judge of the state of New York on your program, the decision analysis on truth and justice, and he had to fly to New York to do this panel because it was committed to like 6 months before. And he said, but in good hands, Michel is picking the jury, and we think we're going to have one by tomorrow before I even get to fly back. So it was kind of an interesting thing, because he was like, no problem, you got Michel. And I'm like, no problem, you have Michel.
I was still so petrified, because it's such, when a person's life is in your hands, it's just, I do a ton of civil work, and I do a lot of criminal work too, but it's always just a heavier feeling. Now, there's a funny story about that. So Richard and I picked it together on Monday. It went into Tuesday. I was there alone because he was with you in New York. And then it goes into the third day. And we have some big decisions to make. And we're all usually in pretty close agreement, but there were some, questions of this one, and somebody doesn't like that one. And Richard calls, and he's like, are you in court? I'm like, right now we have a strategy. It was I don't even know how much of it I should tell you, but it was this great, crazy strategy. But I wanted to get his blessing before we did it. And he's like, well, I happen to be right outside the church. There's that church that we always park in right by the criminal building. And we were in 3 black Escalades with security. Rocky was coming with us to lunch that day, just to kind of, make sure, because we were about to impanel, right? So we're almost done. And I'm like, okay, Richard, stand there. Don't move. You're about to be kidnapped. And it was like, it was like military. 3 Escalades pull up, and we just grab him and we throw him in the back. And he's in his suit and his little bag. And it was very funny.
You put a bag over his head?
Yeah, it looked like, I can't believe nobody called 911, because it looked like we kidnapped him.
An abduction.
And everyone knows that Richard, he's kind of slight, right?
Hey, wait, let me you guys have said Richard's name about 5 times, but I'm sure there are folks who don't know who Richard is. So fill us in.
He's probably the most famous jury consultant, litigation consultant around. He's certainly my favorite. And he trained me 20 years ago. We've been working together a long time. I'm on my own now. I do it on my own, but we connect and work together like 5-6 times a year.
Richard's last name is?
Gabriel.
Right.
Just people are going to be researching
decision analysis. The picture we pulled off to put on the little thumbnail was from decision analysis. That was your picture.
Let me ask you this, and I know you can't share all of your trade secrets here, but for this particular case, what was your model juror, or alternatively, who were you trying to keep off the panel?
Well, this was what was so interesting about the panel. We had 106 jurors get pulled in for the veneer. And out of 106 jurors in Los Angeles, only 4 people of color.
Could you explain what a veneer is, Michelle?
So it's just the people who will be coming in as jurors, right? And veneers are different in every place because populations are different in every place. So the veneer are the jury duty eligible human beings who might be called for jury service. And so you get randomly called in. And I've never seen a jury like this in all of my years doing this. I felt like we were in, as Joe Tacopino said it, he's like, oh, is this Montana? Like, what's happening? Everyone's white. It was shocking. Reverend Al Sharpton even said something about it. There were 4 people of color, but and there were, and when I say people of color, I'm just talking about Black people specifically. There were a few Hispanics and some Asian people as well, but it was shockingly white. And look, I just wanted to make sure he got fair jurors, and I wanted it to. They need to represent him, right? And I wanted there to be a little bit more diversity in the panel, but that just wasn't going to happen.
Okay, so with the Q&As taking place, and you're probably helping him craft those questions. What's a question that would tip you off that this person is maybe not who we want, or the opposite? What would tip you off?
I was very worried about fearful people. I was very worried about the type of person who's going to look at this and say, "Look, these guys are bad. They're fighting. There's may or may not be a gun. It may or not be a real one. I only have the opportunity to put one of them in prison, and I'm going to do it." So I was worried about racist people, and I was worried about fearful people. And we get a lot of that. I wanted someone who might understand a little bit about rap culture, somebody who isn't going to, there were a lot of people with negative opinions about the police, and they were mainly excused for cause, but there would be a really negative opinions about guns and people who own guns and rap community and how violent. A lot of people assume rappers are violent. So anybody who said anything like that, definitely we were concerned. And then there were a lot of people who were huge fans. They're basically like, just let me on this jury, and we couldn't keep them either. But yeah, we just want to make sure that nobody, sorry, I'm crazy here. I haven't been able to have my hair done in a long time because I've been in trial. But it was basically people who had very negative and strong opinions about guns, about rap music, and people who were just really fearful. I was afraid of those. I was fearful of the fearful.
Yeah. So let me ask you a follow-up on that. That we followed the trial for 2 years, YSL case, the Jeffrey Williams case, and finally one of the defendants, Yak Gotti, was not convicted of anything after refusing a plea offer that was no jail time at the end. Did that come into your, shall we say, aura of either picking jurors or your feeling about jurors maybe changing about the rap culture?
No, I didn't know much about that trial. And for me, it was more, we've learned over years and years and years, it's really pre-existing attitudes that they admit in court. And so kind of the shift in general is a problem. But when we have the opportunity to ask very, very specific questions, we get such rich information. And we were working with a very unusual panel, to say the least. We ended up with a really smart jury. But yeah, I was concerned. I was concerned that, these, and also we're talking about guys who grew up in New York. These aren't LA people. The attorneys aren't from Los Angeles. The judge wasn't even from Los Angeles. Nobody.
Really?
No, Judge Arnold was originally from New York as well. Lewin, I believe, is from New York. Obviously, the defense team was all from New York. So
speaking about New York, I was telling sort of the story. I mean, I had to kind of shorten it and kind of got mushed up a bit. Richard Gabriel actually tells it better about when we were picking the Spectre jury, what happened, remember, with Bruce Cutler, and why the question gets asked of jurors now. I'm sure it was from that, like, do you have anything against people from New York?
We asked it.
Yeah, I know that I read about that Joe kind of threw that out there. Yeah.
Well, and Joe was trained by Bruce, so I was a little fearful because I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to dial this back a little bit because LA jurors just are so different from New York jurors, and but Joe was really, I mean, he was, especially next to Lewin, who was having seizures every day. He was freaking out, and Relly, of course, who was acting like a child having a tantrum. I was actually afraid he was going to go hit Joe. I was really, Joe's like, I can take it. Look at me. I'm all built. But he really was tamped down. And he came across as much more like a Los Angeles attorney than Lewin.
Oh, wait. I think Lewin is here.
Oh, perfect. There he is. Oh, hello. Hello, Lloyd.
All right. I always, any
like
chance I can use that, I use
That
that.
was quick.
Okay.
So,
So,
we have a question, right?
yeah,
From Phil Duffy?
oh, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Michelle, why were you so nervous about the verdict? Well, that was before Relly, what you were just talking about. How did you feel after Relly testified?
Oh, I was nervous the whole time. I thought we had an incredible case, which always makes me more nervous because what if something goes wrong? What if it's a juror I fought to keep on the jury? And we had a few snafus. Like, you know, we left I loved this woman, a firearms instructor on the jury.
Yeah,
but then after we'd already impaneled them, we find out from the prosecution had a ballistics report they never shared with the defense, or somebody didn't share with the defense. Yeah. And I had a personal panic attack because I'm like, wait a minute, with that information, we would have impaneled a different jury. And, you know, we didn't get to replace, I mean, obviously at the end it ends up being great, but it was nerve-wracking for a long time. Plus, anytime there's video, right? Even though the video was explained by the defense and, you know, I found our defense witnesses to be wonderful, wonderful advocates, but it's always frightening. Even though Relly came across as an extortionist, a liar, you know, a money grabber, there's still a video of something bad happening, right? And it's Relly was the aggressor, but it's grainy. It's hard to see. I had to trust that the jury was going to study it like we did, and that put me on edge.
So another question, Law Nerd Amber. Question, how do you spot fakers, people who either want out or want in?
Yeah, it can be hard. We call them stealth jurors. The ones who want out are so obvious. They start learning what are people saying to get off for cause, what's getting them struck, and they just say, you know, oh, I can't be fair and unbiased. I just don't want to do this. Or they make up. We had one guy making stuff up, and finally he's just like, yeah, I'm making stuff up because I don't want to do this. Like, okay, well, you actually took an oath, but all right. And then it's much harder to tell the stealth ones, the ones who want to be on the jury. And you remember, Linda, we had to be mindful of that during Spectre 1.
Right. And we still think we got one on. There was one on there that we
had some entertainment people on there. And,
we had entertainment people. And people were calling me. The judge wouldn't let anybody have the names of the jurors, inspector, although we assumed the prosecution had gotten them. But people were calling us and said, oh, juror number 4, he's on this. Juror number 6, he's on this, because they see them. They come into court. They can't see them on camera because they're not shown, but they come into court, or they're working with him, and they're not coming into. Why didn't Joe Smith call him? He's on some jury that's going to take a while.
Yeah, they walk in and they think they're filming a Law and Order episode. Why are these people on the jury? You know.
And Missy Mayhem has one other question for you, and she's one of our producers, and she deserves this question. What was your ideal juror for the ASAP trial?
Well, it's interesting because unfortunately, we don't get to select the jury. We just get our jurors. We get to deselect them. So it's much more about finding people who will not be fair and unbiased. But that said, I wanted people who had some familiarity with rap culture, somebody who was not super fearful, as I mentioned. I would have liked to see a few more people of color even be an option. And gender and race, that is such a bad predictor of jury behavior. I never pick somebody or deselect them based on that. However, he's Black, and I thought there should be some people representing his ethnicity at least available in the pool, and there weren't. But I think an ideal juror is smart, not fearful. And I like the academic type. I like the type who, we had a PhD in planetary geology on there, and she's brilliant. And I wanted her really badly because I'm like, the really bright jurors are going to read those instructions, and they're going to use them as their guide, as their Bible, and be able to look at these videos and be like, wait a minute, just because somebody's sitting on trial does not mean he's guilty. Just because the prosecution's yelling at me does not mean that they're correct. And so having smart, unbiased, and brave jurors is who I was looking for.
Was that the rocket scientist? Is that the one?
Yeah.
There's a rocket scientist on there. Okay, so one more question about the race issue, and we can move on here. But you never even got anybody of color into the box, right? Did you guys use all of your peremptories?
No, we didn't.
So you could have to maybe massage somebody into the box, but you must have felt pretty good with who was there.
Yeah, there was a few unknowns. I liked who was there already. There were a few unknowns coming up, and the prosecution had passed several times. So, and I didn't want to end up in a situation where we use up all of our peremptories and then the prosecution's like, just kidding. And they start cherry picking all of our good jurors off. And it's a strategy.
Could you explain that? They pass out what that means to people?
So essentially, each side gets a certain number of preemptory strikes, and we each had 10. And those are people we can excuse for whatever reason we feel. The judge has excused other jurors for cause, which means that the reason why this isn't the right trial for them, they can't be biased and fair in this particular trial. So we have 10, they have 10. I think they struck 1 or maybe 2, and then they stopped striking. So I was worried if we didn't continue, or if we continued to use up the strikes and let them continue to pass, then they have an opportunity. We have no more opportunity to kick anybody off. They have the opportunity to go back and be like, I'm going to use the remaining 8 strikes. They are, of course, have identified the jurors we like, even though they're passing. And, you know, we know the ones they like, and those are the ones we pluck off. But at the end of the day, we could be stuck, you know, really holding the bag and not having any strong jurors who we thought we could be unbiased for Rocky. So we had to make a decision. I think we only used 6 strikes in total.
Yeah,
out of
interesting.
10. And,
people, you know, we talk all the time about how important the jury selection is, and you're putting a fine point on that. You can just see the strategy, you know, the importance of, well, what if we stop and they're just sandbagging us and they start striking the people we definitely want? It's fascinating. One question about that, back in the day, I used to use Post-its.
Yeah,
you guys, you still using Post-its? Yeah. Yes.
I kind of want to.
I love that.
I
love that.
I use a specific size. I have a whole system.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I thought there'd be some high-tech version of it now, but I think it's the easiest.
You see, you're still in vogue, Michael. You're still
I know.
in vogue.
Thank goodness.
You know,
I got a trial next week. I'm still going to need those Post-its.
Well, and as Linda knows, so I use the little ones for the jury, and then the regular squares for questions. And like Linda, I remember you guys were asking jurors questions, and we're just running up there, handing you new ones. Follow up with this. We're so annoying during the process because we need to know, and there's certain things that we think are really important, and the jurors almost saying it, or we want them, you know, kicked for cause because we don't think that we should have to use a strike on them. So we're trying to get them to say the things that the judge will hear and realize there's no rehabilitating this person. They're not going to be fair. You know, no matter how much you admonish them, they're not going to be fair.
Yeah. And really, you're looking for that one juror too, who will stand up in the middle when everyone's, you know, because, you know, as you know, when you after you sum up, your summation is to give the jurors on your side pieces, right? Pieces that they can go in and argue with for your case because you identify them as your jurors, right?
That's right.
But ultimately, if they get in that quagmire that they're lost in like the minutia and all, you need that one juror who's going to stand up and say, wait, our job is really not to find out what happened here.
Right.
Our job is to find out whether or not the state proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the jury I keep telling people you're looking for.
They get confused about that. And that is also the risk with smart jurors. They tend to want to solve the mystery. And as you say, Linda, that's not their job. And, you know, we try to say that to them over and over again. Like, you don't need to figure out what happened here. But as you say, they get back there and they're like, aha, I figured it out. Maybe it's not the way the prosecution has presented it, but I figured out how they did it and they're going to prison. And that's not your job.
Yeah, that's why I would always try and say, you know, if you have no clue what happened, you know, there's not guilty. It's impossible. So this is just because I love this system. This is what you do, you know, and you've got Mrs. Jones or whatever, however you identify, and that person's gone. Okay, then that person's gone. And then you put a new Post-it in there so that you constantly have an update on because it's happening fast, right? And it can be very confusing. You know, you think you got the person you want, you go, oh my God, it's the wrong Post-it. So yeah.
Linda, we had 20 strikes and there was Batson Wheeler challenges. And so not only do you have to have, you know, space for the new person, but you got to hang on to every single person who's been struck and cause challenged, because you need to be able to argue this person was or was not kicked off for reasons that are untoward. Like, you can't kick somebody off solely based on, you know, now it's even stricter. Now the new Batson rules are like, you don't even have to do a prima facie. You can just say, I'm going to Batson challenge this. And if you've kicked off too many women or too many people of a particular race, it can be a problem.
Yeah, you have to keep that record. And it's someone said here, this is an interesting comment, actually, if I can show it. never heard of picking a jury being a job, but also makes so much sense. So see, we try to educate, and yes, this is a job, and it has a lot of sociological studies behind it, right?
And this is a doctor here. This is doctor, psychologist.
Right.
You know, she's getting in their brains.
My PhD is actually in clinical neuroscience, so I took it a step farther and wanted to know the biology behind the behaviors in addition to just studying the behaviors. But you know what Lisa is saying is a great point, and I always hesitate to say jury consultant because we do so much more than that.
More like a trial consultant.
Yeah, because you know, we prep the witnesses, and as Linda knows, we help write closings, and we were up on, and also helped me with my PowerPoint. Because especially back then, putting little things in.
You mean you couldn't handle the tech? I can't believe that.
Well, I couldn't handle the tech that was behind me going on. See, what we did in our case is because we had so much to cover over 2 days with the 6 hours, there was always a PowerPoint slide behind me that said something, but we weren't really relying on the PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm. You gave such an incredible closing.
People can see that too, right? You can find that. Yeah, people should check that out.
Sure. You know, if not, I have it. Maybe one day we'll post it.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good idea.
Yeah. It wasn't the one though in the movie. I mean, it wasn't. They
kind of they modified that. They took some artistic license on that.
Well, you know, it was written before David Mamet called me. He called me and said, "I've written a movie about you." And I'm like, I thought I was being pranked first. I thought, no, I'm being pranked. It's not David Mamet.
He's one of my favorite writers. He is so good.
He's a fabulous writer, but you don't change. I had a very good relationship with him. He was actually terrific. And you know, when we do the movie night, I'll tell the whole story about the phone call. Actually happened when I was at the Golden Door taking arrests with my girlfriend, who was in the hospital because she was having a nerve attack being at the Golden Door, a nervous attack. Oh, I'll never forget that day.
You got good stories, Linda. I can always
all true.
Some of them she can actually share. So did you get an ASAP name? Because if not, I have one for you.
I actually have two.
Oh, let's hear it.
My children call me Cash Money Mom. And then I don't know if it was Joe or maybe it was one of the ASAP Mom called me ASAP Mommy for a minute.
Okay.
But do you have a better one?
I'm going with ASAP Noggin. Noggin, because of the old brain thing and psychology. Yeah, like ASAP Noggin. I was going to say ASAP Brain, but that's too straightforward. ASAP Noggin has a little more something.
I have to tell you guys, I mean, and I'm going to shout this from rooftops as long as I'm allowed to. Rakim Mayers is one of the most wonderful human beings I've met. This was really personal and it was really hard. Like, look, I always want my clients to win, but this felt wrong. I don't know another way to say it. And just being that, and his friends and the people he's helped in Harlem, like this is a group of 15-year-old boys. And I wanted this to come through, and I hope it did. I wanted it to come through in every question and the opening and the summation that, you know, this is not a mob. It's not gang. It's a group of 15-year-old boys who met at a rap battle. And they decided, hey, we could end up like our dads and our brothers and, you know, in jail and, you know, maybe stay in the projects and not great. Or we can support each other. And most of them are still best friends. And it's been 20 years. And they truly, truly help each other, with the exception of, obviously, Relly. Yeah. But it's a wonderful group of people.
Hey, let's do this.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm going to cue up the verdict.
I know you're going to put the verdict in my name for is ASAP Bowling Ball because but we all love 12E. We all felt we could all have 12E as our we want to all adopt 12E.
Well, so 12E is interested in becoming a lawyer. So funny
how that happens.
I know. I brought him To Kill a Mockingbird, and he loves books, and he reads all the time, and he has never read it. So I'm like, this is for you.
Great.
Lawyer. Yeah.
Speaking of that, when I saw Joe's suit for the closings, I had there was a little To Kill a Mockingbird, a little Atticus Finch look in there, a little seersucker-ish light color, right?
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought of that. And by the way, his tailor, I don't know if it's on every suit, but one of his suits. But underneath the collar, it says "not guilty." He embroidered, the tailor embroidered "not guilty."
That's funny.
Miss Shorty from Australia is going to love that. Miss Shorty, when Joe said he could take on Relly, Miss Shorty calls him Mr. Flexback.
Yeah,
yes, Mr. Flexback. So what I want to do, I want to look at the verdict, and we'll slow down and go kind of like Zapruder filmish on
ugly crying.
It was, and I have the whole thing here. Let me ask you this before we start looking at it. you've seen trials, you've been involved in these things as we have. I have never seen a jury polled prior to the verdict. While you're sitting there, every breath, every syllable is agony before you hear the words. What was going through your mind then when you saw this process play out?
I mean, I've never seen it done back. I mean, A, it's only done when it's a guilty verdict. And B, it's done after the verdict is read. So we're all, I don't know if you look, you can see Chad looking at Joe, and then he looks at Sarah Kaplan, like, Sarah, is this normal for LA? Like, what is going on? And then someone looks at me and I'm like, I've never seen this before. But I was sure, I was certain it was a guilty verdict when
because of that. That's interesting. That's why I thought it just made it more stressful for everybody.
It was more stressful for everybody. I mean, I have some intel about why I did it, but
interesting. But you can't share that?
I can't share, and I can't know for sure.
Okay. I'm going to turn this down. I'm just going to zoom through this because this is all of that. Look at the, you can feel the stress.
Look at his breathing. Watch his breathing.
I know. And I think Joe said that at some point, Rocky said, I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. And Joe said the same thing back. I can't either. Yeah. But this is I've suggested it's a violation of the 8th Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment. I've just never seen this kind of delay in the reading of a verdict.
And he was a great judge. He was a great judge.
I think he was interesting. I think he had his hands full, but he did a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then they actually bring the slip back to the clerk. He's the guy in the shades the whole time, right?
Alex. Yeah.
I saw that's. I kept noticing this dude in the shades all the time.
Mm-hmm, that's Alex.
Okay, so let me get past it here. Everybody's counting heads and what's going on, back and forth, and then Nelly. Okay, and then okay.
Here it comes.
Los Angeles Superior Court, County of Los Angeles. People of the State of California versus Joaquin Mayers. Case number BA 508142-01. We, the jury in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Joaquin Mayers, not guilty of
And it's like, oh, hey, we forgot there's another count. So do you get chills hearing that again?
I get teary. Teary.
So look at, who is that?
My husband was taking like screenshots of me. He's like, you are ugly crying, Michelle. I'm like, I know.
But it's funny that the best shot of you, or there's a side shot. Here's the glancing blow. There you go. Come on. Oh. And then the best shot of you would have, you covered your face.
I was a sobbing mess. I've never cried before in court. Never.
And that was, who was that you were giving a hug to right there?
Well, it was either Sarah,
That's Sarah Kaplan right there?
Yes, Sarah Kaplan, and next to her is Eleonora Lanzoni, and she's incredible. Is
she an associate or a techie?
No, she's an attorney. She's barred. Yeah. She actually, and this is one of the reasons I liked, I mean, Judge Arnold was so unusual. He even had me addressing the court, which is very unusual. He's like, why don't we have her do a little bit of the voir dire? And she did. She did a wonderful job. She's brilliant.
Very cool. What annoyed me most about the Relly factor was, she was used to bring the laptop up, and that's why I wondered if she was a tech type or if she was an associate. So she brings it up, and he was so dismissive, when he was through with her, and it was just, it was despicable, right?
Well, and also, I just didn't like her that close to him because she is young, and she's small, and he was like a seething, like he was mad. He was really, really mad, and as everybody saw. And I call her the Swiss Army knives of attorneys. She can do anything. I mean, and speaking of Linda, it wasn't so much me who helped you on the tech. That was Jonathan. Even Jonathan,
you're right. It was Jonathan Ross.
I suck at it still. But
shout out. I remember the night before when none of us were sleeping. And we're in that prep room, and Jonathan, Can you do, what are you going to do here at the slide? Can we put the knockout? And he just know, boom, boom, boom,
Yep.
boom, like 2 seconds.
I can feel his pain. I can understand what he was going through.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, so we have Lisa Caron says, what is your opinion on moving the court case due to potential for contamination of a jury? I think it just generally, especially in high profile cases when there's so much media coverage.
we had a 20-page questionnaire with Spectre because we were like, okay, everyone's already tried him in the press. He's already been convicted in the court of public opinion. It's a real problem. I don't know if that came up for this case, but in general, the contamination is a real thing. It doesn't often get approved. I mean, moving to a different veneer, it often doesn't. You have to really prove that you cannot collect fair and unbiased witnesses because of contamination. And, it's happened in a few places, but I mean, they used to sequester juries. Remember that?
Yeah, it still happens, but it's rare. Yeah.
Was there ever a point in time you looked at the jury or saw one of the jurors' faces and said, we got them? That's my A question. I'd like to do then a B subpart. When Lewin,
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Judge. When Lewin went after Rihanna, I was really pissed off here on the show. I said it to Michael Bryant. I said he should keep her name out of his mouth. She has nothing to do with this case and all. Was there any visceral reaction from the jury?
They had a few reactions to Lewin. Well, first, let me say this was a really stoic jury, and you know what? Not one of them ever looked like they were bored. Not one ever looked tired. I never caught a sleeping juror, which I catch every time. And they did not laugh at Lewin's jokes, especially after that. And they just kind of kept that look of like, it wasn't disdain, it was poker face. But they did engage a lot more with Joe Tacopina. Like there were some smiles and giggles at jokes, but they took their job. I haven't talked to them yet, but it appeared they took their job very, very seriously. And I think they were at the end kind of over Lewin. I mean, I was surprised that he didn't control himself better than he did. And I was surprised he went after Rihanna because look, obviously we wish everybody could afford a defense like a celebrity can, but they have other things they're fighting against too. I mean, I don't think this case ever would have made it if he weren't a celebrity.
No. Nope.
So for him to keep harping on that, you're the guy who decided to bring this. So, to try this case. I mean, I know a lot of people, a lot of prosecutors told me they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those cases that we all set back, and we're not biased. We're open-minded. We want to see the case unfold. I don't know of anybody that was even leaning in any way toward the prosecution. It was so clear that it was scary.
There was one reporter. There's one reporter.
There's always an oddball out there. But like our poll was 85%. Others I've heard were, it just is not a case that people were, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in the sense of the merit of the case. It was, oh my gosh, what's going to happen because who knows what a jury's going to do.
That's right. And again, that's one of the reasons I was so fearful, not because I thought there was a chance we were going to lose, but when you have a good case, and Richard is when he put this into words for me, because I'm like, why am I so scared? He's like, because we should win this. And it's always a little bit more pressure. And I did read some of the polls, but I'm like, are these really like, usually I always think of the people who watch these trials as more punitive, more prosecution oriented. So I did find some solace in the polls, but I also didn't want to get, it's a tendency to get cocky. We're in there, we're writing, cross-examination questions and we're, doing all of this stuff. And I'm like, I felt too confident. So I always bring it back. And I have to answer this question. Who has the better poker face? I'm going with Linda.
Okay. I am not surprised that the jury was not bored because love them, hate them, whoever's in front of them. It was not a low-key trial, right? I mean, aside from the celebrity factor, you've got some very entertaining lawyers, love them or hate them.
That's right. And speaking of which, this next question that just came up, it said Lewin mocking 12E was so wrong, and it just showed that the state had nothing. That I took personally, and I wanted to have words with Lewin afterward because, listen, 12E was nervous, and he got up there and he was articulate and he's bright and he told the truth. And for Lewin, and I don't know if you guys remember this moment.
You talking about the you feel me moment? Yeah.
It felt racist.
It really was insensitive at best.
It was insensitive at best, and it was a whole lot of ugly at worst. And I expected more from a deputy DA. I really did. And look, I have no personal problems with Lou, and I'm sure he doesn't like me right now, but it was really disappointing to see him do that. And never did Lou or 12E or Bari, never were they disrespectful back. They were wonderful. They were just, you know what? They were afraid for their friend, and they could see through this.
Yeah, especially since on the tape with Relly and Wally, I keep saying, if you listen to it, Relly says, "Do you feel me? Do you feel me?" So he had no problem with it when Relly was saying it on the tape, along with, in my opinion, extortion. And the judge says, you know, that's you ask for money. It doesn't matter what is the legal definition, because Lewin kept saying, well, it's not legally the definition. Right. Or shakedown, I guess we could call it, right?
Oh yeah, shakedown would have been
shakedown. I guess is a good way to call it for people that don't know what extortion is. But when 12E says it and is so earnest about it, you feel we all know what it is.
Of course, it's just outrageous. One of the other things he did, and I'm curious how the jurors reacted, was when he didn't hear the answer he wanted, which was often, he would say, "Listen to the question. Listen to my question," which is insulting and arrogant at the same time. Did you sense anything from the jury when he was on that rant?
The jurors, and I didn't want to be too overconfident, but I felt like these are smart jurors, and they're watching this man act in such a petulant way that I'm sure they were offended on 12E's behalf, and offended just in general. I didn't see any smiles, any winks, anything that would make me fearful. There was a moment where he actually addressed the jury in kind of a funny way. It was like they were going to be working later through lunch, and he's like, "That's not on me." And there was a little bit of smiling there. And I know some people were concerned about it, but I had just seen them be so stoic when it came to Lewin, and a little less stoic when it came to Joe. But again, this was a hard jury to read. They were very stoic. And I was so, Rocky thanked them. They did their job. And it doesn't matter what they think actually happened that night. Based on the jury instructions and the evidence, they did the right thing. Absolutely.
Yep. So what's this question, Lisa? What'd she say? Do you think we'll hear soon whether the civil case, let's get into that, will continue or be dropped? I think that if it continues, it will damage the reputations of Camille Vasquez and Benjamin Chu. What's your take on that?
I think, this isn't going to be good for the civil case, and I'm hoping it gets dropped. I think that it would be bad news to go forward with it. All of this is out there for everyone to see. But knowing the players in the game, I suspect they're going to try. They're going to try to keep it going.
Man, I don't know.
It's not a good look.
Brutal. No, it's brutal.
And, it's not a good look also for some of the networks who like pick a reporter and say, well, everything that reporter says, let me just retweet, because we have a certain bet. We came into this case really not knowing what we were going to see. And it was very clear, once Michael and I got into it, and both of us, Michael's lived in LA, in California, and I've been trying cases for a long time. And we reported that this was going to be a shakedown defense, and we reported that there was some ethics concerns was going forward. And we've actually asked the DA about it. Haven't heard back at all. And I, as an attorney, if I were a prosecutor, I couldn't bring that case without having somebody review whether or not Relly should be charged with extortion. Couldn't do it.
They didn't do it, and nobody ever explained it either. And I don't think you're going to get an answer. I don't think.
No, we're gonna keep at them until we get an answer. They may not answer, but
we might. So extortion and perjury. That'd be nice. Yeah. It's shocking. And, we've also talked about, and it relates to this unethical nature of the prosecution's case. How did Lewin get parachuted into this case, at the last minute? Have you learned anything about that?
I can tell you my suspicion. My suspicion is nobody else wanted to do it because they saw the writing on the wall, and there's so many problems with it, and that's not to say it was a slam dunk for us. It was a tremendous amount of work. I've never worked this hard on anything in my entire life, like in such a short period of time. That's not true. I have dissertations and publications and other cases, and TV shows where I'm up until 2 a.m. But this just emotionally and just with concentration and fervor, it would have been a travesty had he gone to prison.
We liked Paul P. We kept calling him
Paulie P. I call. I could never pronounce his name. So
in terms of, we thought that whatever his facts were, at least he was being earnest, and even when he argued that, what did you have any intel with the need for having a second chair was all of a sudden?
You know, I don't really know what that was about. He was certainly more tempered. He was certainly more polite. I had to, when the verdict was read, they had already closed down the temple side of the courthouse. So everyone was supposed to go to the back, but I was the first one there, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss it. So the guard let him in, and then I knocked on the door and I looked at him. I'm like, come on, tell him to let me in. And Paul had the guard let me in. He's like, yeah, that's the jury. First he didn't recognize me, and then he's like, that's jury consultant. So she can come in. And so I'm very grateful to him in that regard. And he was always very polite. I imagine, and this is complete speculation, I imagine that Lewin, had a lot of opinions and told him a lot of how he wanted it done. But again, I don't know these guys personally. I know their reputations, but that's all I had to work for. I've never been against or for working in a courtroom with Lewin before, or Prislomiak.
Okay, so now you talked a bit about Rocky, about how wonderful he really was a fabulous client in our opinion. Looking at him, he stood there the whole time, except for that one incident, which to me was not a big deal. Yeah. But he was so respectful. He was well kept, well groomed. He didn't look like he was the kind of client, and you know what I'm talking about. Let me write the note. All the time.
I know who you're talking about.
The attorneys, yes. The client attorney, yeah.
He remembered everybody's name. Every day, he greeted every single person with a hug and a name and a compliment about what he had noticed, the work that they had put in. He took every piece of advice. He was helpful, kind, never entitled, smelled really good. He was.
Oh, is that Gucci guilty? Is that coming up?
So an interesting cologne. I loved it.
That's a new cologne, right?
Does he have a new cologne?
The Gucci guilty? Isn't that the cologne that's
probably what he was wearing. God, what an unfortunate name.
I don't know. I mean, that's what I read. It could be totally false. I mean, it's like Johnny Depp had
that was the Sauvage, or
right? The Savage Sauvage.
Gotta remarket that. He was wonderful. He's very smart. So I sat next to him during the jury selection process, and every time there was a sidebar, I told him, this is what's being argued up there. This is what they're saying. This is what we're doing. And I want your opinion, Rocky. And by the way, everyone mispronounced his name. And I asked him, I'm like, it's got to be hard hearing these lies about yourself. He's like, it's also really hard to hear everyone mispronouncing my name. His name is Rakim.
Not Rakim.
Rakim. Not Rakim. It's Rakim Mayers. So
rock him.
Like rock him. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's from the Wu-Tang Clan. I think his name.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. But anyway, long story short, he was super smart and involved and had opinions and asked a lot of questions and understood the process, very engaged. And jurors can tell, they want their criminal defendant to be engaged.
He's a smart dude. You could just tell.
Smart dude. And just so thankful and grateful. And he even said, he was just so appreciative. And you really got the sense that no matter which way this went, he was just, I think he even said as much to the attorneys, we're on this together, and no matter which way this goes, you guys, I didn't hear it personally, but that's my understanding that he was really.
Well, let's go back to that, because you said something that had dawned on me, that whole thing about the reading the jury verdict over the shoulder. One's going to read it, then you read it over the shoulder, make sure it's your verdict, pass it down, 3 or 4, which took forever. And I had never seen. The thought ran through my mind was, well, the only reason why you're polling a jury is if you've got a guilty. I've never seen polling a jury for a not guilty. That whole period of time, that had to seem, let's go back to it, because you said you thought maybe it could be a guilty. Had that been done before? Had anyone any knowledge that was going to happen? Because, boy, it was tough.
None of us had ever seen it before. None of the attorneys, none of the trial consultants, nobody had ever seen it before. I don't know if there was an element of suspense because it's, televised, if it was, I understand doing it beforehand if it's guilty, but I don't know why it was done before, other than expecting drama in the courtroom afterward. But I just can't imagine why it's done for a not guilty. I don't, the only thing I can speculate, I've heard other things, but the only thing I can speculate from myself it was a little bit of entertainment, like,
Sure,
and I
you
can
think-
tell you, I
yeah.
was sweating, I was hyperventilating. I'm so personally offended by it because it was really hard to watch, to watch Rocky breathing. And it's like,
it was just painful.
It's
And
painful.
so you think the judge orchestrated this for his own amusement?
He might do this in every trial. I don't know.
Yeah.
He might, but I doubt, I highly, highly doubt he does this ever if it's a not guilty verdict.
Okay, so the cameras were on Rocky and Joe and Chad, and Joe's kind of like moving around and all.
They're both swaying and so,
What was the prosecution doing? Because we didn't see a camera on them.
Lewin has a look. Paul's pretty stoic. Lewin has a look where he does this thing like and I don't mean this in a mean way. It reminded me of Jurassic Park when the dinosaurs were like, huh? Like he has a look, especially if he's upset.
He's a velociraptor. Okay, I got it.
And I don't mean that personally. I don't like when anyone talks about anybody's looks, and he's not a bad looking guy. I'm not saying that, but it's a reaction that is kind of steeped in a mix of impossibility, feeling incredulous, anger. But during the verdict reading, I can't tell you what anybody was doing other than me, because I was hyperventilating and I was just so afraid. And I have Rihanna sitting directly behind me, and I've got his mother next to her and his sisters. And I'm like, oh my God, like I am watching the biggest moment of all of these people's lives. And it was just a tremendous amount of pressure and fear and ultimately triumph and gratitude for this jury, gratitude that they got it, and they got it.
Yeah.
Have you, or do you, I know you said you haven't talked to any jury members. Any plan to do that? Do you normally reach out?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm one of those jury consultants who I love to learn from my mistakes. And I want to know, even when I win. I didn't win. Even when the team wins, I always like to do them if I have the opportunity, because it's the best way to learn. It's the best, I don't trust people who don't want to do it, because I'm like, you just don't want to know, but it's the only way I get any better.
Sometimes we know in California, they set up a microphone upstairs or downstairs in a room for the jurors to come and talk to the attorneys or who are involved in the case. Was that, or the media, was there any indication that was ever going to be done here? I know the verdict was late because of the hour and a half waiting.
I didn't get any indication that was going to be done. And then when we exited the building, I'm sure you guys saw the mass chaos. It was massive chaos. And, there was a reporter, I think from Channel 7 News. He's like, he's like, I'm not even going to get into that mob. And it used to not be like this, but now it's all these media influencers who are all
anybody with a phone, really,
Yeah, it was when a fight broke out, and it felt really bad for the team. I stood in the back, but the team, I just was like, God, they're going to get, Rihanna's going to get trampled. You can only have so much security.
Yeah, you had some big boys, though. I saw some big guys there leading them to the SUV. And he's telling the crowd, hey, you got to shut up or we're just going to leave. Because they're just people yelling things out because they're not, media. They're just people with cell phones.
That's right. It's a bit of a clown show.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't say too much. I have really strong feelings.
No. Look, we have questions from our viewers who are very interested. Everybody who watched was very invested in this case. I think, the day that we were on all day, 9 hours waiting for the trial, we had something like 21,000 people watching just our little channel here.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was 27, but who's counting? Okay, Brooklyn has a question. I don't know if there's any basis in fact for this or not. Did you see Joe's Richie Mille watch?
I did. I saw a watch. I don't know what brand it was, but I did see a nice watch.
That is one of the missing watches from the YSL case. So I don't know if this reference is about that, or if he just thinks that Joe has one of those.
I have no idea who makes it. That's
okay.
I could write a book on the things.
And we've been really invested in this case because we've been covering it. We've been working our sources, and we had, we reported the 3 bombshell reports. One about what the likelihood of the opening was going to be with the defense, what the defense was going to be, and I think we were pretty close, if not exact. We also reported about what the judge may have been telling the prosecutor after or during Relly, not after, but during Relly's cross-examination, and what the judge may have been telling the prosecutor again during Relly's severe cross-examination, we thought, by Joe Tacomino. And California is a big place, and if you're invested in trying to find out from people what's going on, you can probably do it. If you have an opinion that you're going to say that Rocky's guilty, and you're going to continue that opinion all the way through because that's your opinion, and why you were invested in that for some other reason, there you go.
No, you're right. You're right. And and you guys seem, there's nobody better in the business than you guys. So I can understand why you were able to get all of those 3 points right. But yeah, it was
probably means because we're old and we've been around a while.
No,
yeah, that's what experienced is the word we're looking for rather than ancient. So Brooklyn has another question, and this is interesting. Luckily, we don't have to deal with it, and you didn't have to, but it must have been a conversation. If he had been found guilty, were you talking about, would they take him into custody immediately? Did you have those conversations, the what-if conversations?
It's really funny you should say that. So when I got the call from the team that the verdict had been, that the verdict was ready, I hop on the phone with Richard, and I'm like, Richard, there's a verdict. Richard Gabriel, my partner in this. And I decided to take an Uber because I didn't want to deal with parking and running in heels. And I'm, I somehow cannot be taught that flats are what I need. And he called me, he's nervous. And I'm like, I'm not going to go if they're going to handcuff him right there and take him from his family right there. Like, I can't do it. And he's like, well, they might. But both of us were afraid to ask the team because everyone was so emotional about this. I have not, the tears you saw, the people getting choked up, I think this was everyone's most important. Look, these guys are professionals and everything they do is important and they're damn good. But this was very emotional for everybody. And I can just say that. And they worked their asses off. Sorry, bad potty mouth word.
That's okay.
That's okay. No, that's okay, because we all know how this. People don't understand, because usually, although we've seen a shift this year, defense attorneys are hated so bad. I tell the story, and Richard did pro bono, the questionnaire for the pro bono case I had it was in conjunction with the Innocence Project, and in Tennessee, I did the court case, right? You did the questionnaire, right? And we went down there to Maynardville, Tennessee, to get that jury, and I still show it when I teach lecture. It said, "What do you think of defense attorneys?" Right? And it said they're just doing their job for the person that we're going to convict anyway. Okay, so that's the view, but we've seen a shift this year a little bit between YSL, which everyone thought, oh look, all these 24 rappers down to whatever are going to be convicted, and then there were some other not guilty verdicts. We've seen kind of a shift, and is this like a shift that you're seeing as a jury consultant in terms of how jurors are acting?
I think that because of the ability, everyone is obsessed with true crime. We all have every answer to every question we've ever had on our phones. And I think people are more educated now about what it means to have a fair and unbiased trial, and what our right to a fair trial. And I think that we are seeing a shift. And I've been noticing it over the last 10 years, in fact, that there is more of a respect, and maybe it has to do with the administration at the time, but more of a respect of, look, everybody, I'd rather let a guilty man go than ever have an innocent man put behind bars. And so I do actually think that people are, now they can look it up. What is the process? How does this all work? What do these jury instructions mean? So it's a lot less of like, bad guys need to go to jail, and if it looks bad to me, and if he's being charged, he's probably guilty, and a little bit more of an understanding of the actual law. I've seen a lot more of that.
Yeah, it's been scary to see some of the misconduct, some of the, we're not just talking about a bad case, which is clearly the Rocky case, just a bad case for the prosecution. We're talking about overt misconduct, and that's scary.
It's scary.
Have you or members of the team talked to Rocky or his family? Well, let's talk about you. Have you talked to Rocky or his family since the verdict has come in that day?
I have not spoken to Rocky, but the team definitely has. And I think he's just elated, and as confident and he always kept such a positive demeanor, but he knew it could go the other way. He knew it. Yeah. And, I think everyone, he's probably just kind of decompressing, spending time with Rihanna and the children and his family, and, his mom and his sisters. And, but they've talked to him, and it's like Christmas. I don't know how to describe
it's like being reborn, you know,
Yeah.
because your life is in such limbo.
Well, and I
you
said
know.
I was gonna, if this didn't go well, you guys will get this, and maybe your audience, this will be interesting. When it's a really quick verdict, and this wasn't really quick, but it was still under 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's scary because that means that there might not have been deliberation or a lot of it. And if that was the case, if it had been guilty and that were the case, I would have felt very much it was my fault, you know, like given that those were the people I thought could do a good job. And I literally said, I'm not doing it ever again. I'm not doing it ever again if this didn't. But yay, it was fucking working.
Well,
She's still working.
You guys are the ones who taught me. It reinforced what I had always known, but you taught me that there are two kinds of jurors: those that go in to the jury room and say, "Okay, let's get a quick impression. Take a quick. What do you really think?" And then they may stay around a little bit just because they want to look at the exhibits themselves. They want to make sure what their first thoughts are right. And then they do the final vote. Or those who say, you know, and that was our first line inspector. Yep. Remember, seek the truth. They want to find things out for themselves, and they'll take a week, even if there's so much reasonable doubt. You know, you can, build a bridge with it.
That's right.
Right.
And I always prefer the juries that go through the evidence before they take a tally. And I want to tell them, I want there to be an instruction that you have to talk about everything before you take a vote. I mean, that's what we tell them in our mock juries. But yeah, it's right. Are they verdict-based juries or are they evidence-based juries? Like, what are they going to deliberate on? And yeah, so I was nervous, but you know what I think? And I can't wait to reach out to some of these. I really think they could just see all the holes. They could just see what a mess this was, and they could see what Relly is, who Relly really is.
Yeah.
Marie A., does the jury consultant stay in the courtroom until the end of the trial? Do they provide feedback at the end of every day, and how the team should adapt?
The answer is sometimes. There are trials in which I'm there from the very beginning from discovery all the way to verdict and post-trial interviews. Sometimes I'm just there for the day just to pick the jury. I personally will sometimes offer my services for free after a jury pick because I want to help make sure that the witnesses and the closings are all tailored toward the jury we picked. Like I don't want, if you have a really bright scientific jury, then you can do things in your closing that you might not do in another jury. You can bring in, you can ask questions of a witness that maybe you hadn't thought you could ask. So I prefer to be along all the way to the very end, but it's expensive.
By the way, our viewers, it's Ryan's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday.
I hope you like the gift of your husband being home. And boy, that's just what a flippin' relief. I would feel horrible.
No doubt. Yeah. Hey, before we kick you loose here, what's happening? What are you working on? What's in the mix for you?
Oh gosh, I'm working on, I have to go back to some much less exciting civil stuff. I do a lot of med mal and I do criminal too. And I have a couple TV things percolating and a podcast percolating again. I have a lot of podcasts out there, but that's really fun work, by the way. It's so easy.
Yeah. Do you want to promote anyone in particular?
Wait.
I have my own podcast, which I have not recorded a new episode in 2 years, but it's called How Not to Raise a Serial Killer.
Oh, okay.
And a podcast I do with ID, Investigation Discovery, called The Mind of a Monster. Not to be confused with my TV show, Mind of a Murderer.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, those are fun. Those are really
fun. But the podcast, you say the podcasts aren't so much work. We're finding this is a lot of work. Maybe because
that's because I don't call it a podcast. A podcast
channel.
To me is audio, and this is a streaming channel. That's what this is.
Let me know if you guys ever need a third one, because you guys are loads of fun. I love this stuff, and I love doing things in real time and not digging through it's hard because a lot of my work is to go back to the past to talk about why a killer did what he did, but there's 9 million podcasters doing that. So now I kind of like to look at the ones that are coming up, like the new crimes. Yeah,
there's two kinds of podcasts, like streaming channels like us, and then there's podcasts that get into a case and like Serial, you do this.
That's right.
The different things. So I think everyone's using them interchangeably these days, but they're really not in terms of how they're broached.
I agree.
No,
agree.
Not at all.
And but we're all on TV. Yes, Tandra Cook. I've served on a jury 3 times. Wow. I think cases being televised has made a huge difference in the understanding of the evidence, decisions, and verdict.
Yeah.
I like to hear that.
To the best, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Got to hear that.
Well, we know you're going to be doing good stuff. We're going to keep track of you, and maybe we'll work on a project. I don't know. We'll have to come up with something here.
I would love it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate your time. Take care, Michelle. Dr. Michelle Ward, everybody. Bye-bye.
Michel Ward.
She's great. Great.
She is great. She's fabulous. She's wonderful. And you can see our viewers were like, well, this is great. Somebody said they came on late, and this is great. I mean, and she's great. I mean, you can see she's just.
Yeah, I said, we'll be like about 30 minutes.
That's what we thought. We thought
times two. You could always tell, if 30 minutes is a lot for people to give up, but if you're talking and things are interesting, and before you know it, it's like a conversation, time just gets away from you, and there you go. So
yeah. Well, there's a lot of things happening. I'm getting noticed, right? Here, and we want to talk about another case, but I don't know.
Do we want to? It's already late. I don't know.
I think it's kind of late for our people. I think we should just leave this as Dr. Ward's episode.
Yeah, that's what I say.
So great. And we'll see. What
are we doing tomorrow night? Do we know?
Well, I know that we're supposed to be on for 10 minutes with Miss Shorty. But I see that there may have been a defense document. Did you send that to me? Filed in the Karen Reed defense.
Did Missy find it? There was a new one filed today. It was the defense response to. Everybody knows the big kerfuffle that has erupted in the Karen Reed case. The hearing is going to be on Tuesday. The further hearing, we will be up there for that. We'll be on live before the hearing. We'll cover the hearing, then we'll be on afterwards live from the scene. And the issue is whether or not the defense fibbed a little bit, specifically Alan Jackson, in suggesting in trial number one that they had no direct contact with the ARCA people, who were federal employees or federal vendors who did an investigation and learned and believed and had an opinion that the subject SUV driven by Karen Reed never ran into John O'Keefe. Obviously huge for the defense, but now there's some suggestion maybe the defense knew more than they suggested the first time around, maybe even misrepresented their connection with ARCA and their experts. There are emails, there's an invoice for $24,000. It's a mess, and we're not sure what's going to happen, what the remedy is if the judge, who is gravely concerned, Judge Bev is gravely concerned, we're not sure what she's going to do. That's going to happen Tuesday. So I have not had a chance to look at this defense response yet. Have you?
So either we're going to be doing a little Miss Shorty, or we're going to do a small episode on the Karen Reed, or whatever. I'm driving tomorrow. I'll be in the country.
Going up to the hills.
Haven't been up there for 2 months. So whatever we're doing is going to be at night, I assume, around. I guess Australia time would be. I don't know. We're on at 6. Here we go again.
It's 14 hours ahead of time. So right now they are already into 10 a.m. Friday morning.
Okay, so
yeah. So
what is 6 p.m.? What is 6 p.m.? Hey guys, what is 6 p.m. our time in Australia?
That's 10 a.m. That's 10 a.m. for them.
So maybe that'll work out.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out. We'll announce that.
Yeah, and we were going to do the Rose Petal Murder, but we ran out of time, and maybe we'll do it from Karen Reed, or maybe we'll just do one thing and do all that other stuff on Monday. But Lisa, I'm so addicted to this channel. Well, then we ask you all who are watching, because there's so many more.
Hit that like button. Is that right? Hit the like button.
Yeah, subscribe, but it doesn't cost anything. But the like button gets us into the algorithm.
That's
so
what I hear.
The important thing before we go off the air for you to hit the like. If you're in the chat, or if you're just lurking, please hit the like button for us. So I understand a lot of podcasters open with that. Do it in the middle. Do it every 10 minutes, because people come in and out of podcasts or streaming channels, as we call ourselves.
There you go.
So hit that share, subscribe, notify, but most of all, right now, before we say goodnight.
And I'm so excited you got notified this time. So
I'm so excited
making some progress.
I can't believe it.
Okay, and then we have that comments show that we're going to drop in before they become,
Yeah, and maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow night. Maybe that'll come. Maybe we'll do Miss Shorty in the comments. Well, we got stuff. We got so much stuff. We're booking ourselves into our rundowns like for 3 months ahead, including the fact that we're going to be covering the Karen Reed trial. Michael will be there most of the time.
Yeah. We're going to do a little visit on Tuesday, so that could be very interesting. Yeah. All right, then. Thanks, partner. I guess we'll see you next time. I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenney Baden. Together, we are Justice Served TV. Again, if you like us, hit that like button, subscribe, share, and notify. And we'll see you tomorrow night.